G'day punters, welcome back to the Monday review of the Punters Academy. John Walter from racingwatch.com.au, good morning.
Good morning. You haven't washed away, I haven't washed away. It's a miracle. I'm getting some terrible reports this morning of people up this way that are in ordinary shape with businesses and housing and stuff. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, our local village was sort of like a bit over a metre underwater, running like a river yesterday, and it was worse than even in 2011 we didn't get that. So definitely the worst I've seen, and unfortunately, there are people who will be suffering the effects of the flood, and obviously now it's down into northern New South Wales. So Lismore, I think, has been evacuated. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be. I mean,
I've never seen rain like it in Brisbane yesterday. Never seen rain like it.
Well, more than 250 mil from 9 a.m. I think it was, and we had consecutive days of those. In fact, we had like 3 days of that. So all these meetings
rain
around
like
Queensland,
it in Asia and stuff, but not that normally lasts for 20 minutes. This 3 days.
Relentless. But anyway, we bat on. So Randwick Saturday, John, we sort of started with what appeared to be sort of like a slow to heavy time for race one, which you'd sort of expect first use of track, and the final reads come out at around about 8.1. Unfortunately, those 2-year-old times, races 3 and 4, where it was really belting down, suffered the effects, I think, of the track, and so those 2 races probably raced more like an 11, but they did sort of get to run some reasonable times later on in the day. So look, Randwick played really well. I went into the meeting thinking 7 off, 7-8 off, and it seemed that way after race 1, race 2, and then suddenly, by the time we got to Ellsberg, we had sort of fence. It wasn't hard fence at the top of the straight, but sort of 2 off, and then drifting out to about 5 off at the finish. But certainly that inside section seemed okay, and all you can really say is that it was probably a fair track. I mean, there's evidence there with horses like
Kerry Parker's horse got up the inside there in the fillies race at big price, and
I'm trying to think, it was Evangelic, I think, there, and also
stayed hard fence pretty much, didn't it? Yeah.
Angel of Truth and horses like that at big odds that were up the inside. I haven't got all the lanes data yet, but that'll shed some more light on it. But on first value, you'd have to say it was pretty fair, and it was a good wet track.
Number one, it was amazing they raced. I thought they were insane. I honestly thought they were beyond crazy. I was just hoping that they'd get around safe, and just couldn't really understand, especially the way that race 1 and 2, the conditions they were running, and then it wasn't as if they were expecting, fine and sunny to come through at lunchtime. I can't believe they raced, and I can't believe how well the course ended up racing. And apart from the 2-year-olds, as you say, who, not only they caught probably the worst of the conditions, but they'd never seen conditions like it either. So other than those couple of races, every other race sort of seemed to, run without incident.
Okay, well, let's kick off with the highway, the 1,000-metre highway, race 1. They did go very fast, that first 200-metre section. That was courtesy of Gift Giver from the Cody Morgan stable.
Which is amazing for a heavy track, isn't it? Like normally when you're expecting bottomless, they come out and walk. But yeah, this one comes out scrub.
He was giddy up early. By the time they got to the 600, it was sort of above average. So relatively strong highway, this, John. I know it was race 1 and we had the wet track, but the winner, Shelby 66, ran the 3rd best last 800 rating, the 6th best last 600 rating, 3rd best 400, and 2nd top last 200 rating on the meeting. It's really gone to a new level. Solid 2-1 favourite, but really appreciated the conditions. And back in distance, 1,400 metres to 1,000 metres, good effort.
Interesting, like Danny, he carried on that it should have won 3 in a row, but maybe this exposes what this horse is. Maybe it's a sort of, I know it was a heavy track, a very fit racehorse back in distance, but certainly a much more explosive horse ridden back off a fast tempo in a short course race. So maybe it's just a really solid 1,000 to 1,200 max horse that, when he looks a bit camera shy at the end of 1,400, that may be because he's getting tired, because he didn't really even burst through the line there. He sort of is nearly gone on the line there. So, and it's interesting, but I agree with you. And he's obviously got foot problems, which sometimes horses with feet problems sort of get through wet tracks okay, better than they do on hard tracks. So maybe he got conditions ideal for him on Saturday, but he's certainly very explosive.
A couple of notes from the stewards report. Gift Giver, the Cody Morgan horse we mentioned, didn't appreciate the conditions according to the rider and was slow to recover. So it dropped out pretty quickly. And Take the Shot didn't handle the conditions either, and it was also slow to recover out of the race.
Horrendous ride on it. It's a sort of, he's either a 900-metre horse or a horse that needs to be cuddled. He looked like a complete forgive, Take the Shot. Second and third horses both went quite well, considering they'll probably end up in similar grade, whereas I think Shelby 66, that might be the end of it for highways. But, certainly Devil's Triangle and Prince Niconi in a similar race can measure up without much issue.
Agree. Solid support to Devil's Triangle, starting there at 7-2. So we'll move on to race 2, which was the 1,100-metre midway. And here we've got, they went out 1.7 above to the 800 and came home 0.9 above. Oh, sorry, I should say went out to 0.9 above to the 600. So above average tempo early for the first 300 metres.
Another race where it's interesting to see him just out of the gates there, like 3 horses ridden out. It's just amazing. You don't normally see it. So a line of 4 on a heavy track with a solid first section in this sort of conditions. And you can see, like, this is when the weather's just starting to set in. Very strange.
Yeah. Once again, a few switched, lost its plate and running. It was sort of started pretty solid in the market. Deep Crystal, look, it didn't seem to have any excuses other than the fact that it may have not handled the conditions. Invincible Kiss, once again, they said that it wasn't comfortable in the conditions and it copped a whip over the nose.
Weird ride, but I don't think it mattered. Like he hunts up on the inside early, then sort of tries to drag back and around him to get to the middle of the track. I think he must have got baked in the first when he sort of stuck to the inside, but I don't think it really mattered. And
Mayrose got home, and I think it ran about the 7-4 favourite, so it got out and got the job done. Not much to say about this race, I don't think, is there?
No, I think the winner's probably the one with the upside, and I doubt the conditions suited it the best, and it's probably had things go its way in the run, as of like tempo and the run it got, and those horses up on speed probably got softened up. The ones that were out the back were a little bit too far back, and it may have been in the sweet spot, but the only horse really in the race with any potential upside, I think the others are all going okay, but it's the only horse I can see getting out of this grade.
Okay. We'll move on to race 3, the first of the 2-year-olds, the Sweet Embrace. They've gone out -2 to the 800 and -4.7 to the 600, so below average tempo here, and they've come home very slow section. Last 800, 8.7 lengths below and 6.1 below to last 600. So this is one of those 2-year-old races I alluded to earlier, being severely affected by the conditions and the rain. Fireburn John, I managed to save on it. I didn't get any joy here. I thought Extravagant Star was a bit disappointing.
Look at it here, like it's got its neck bowed. This looks more like a wet track race where they've absolutely crawled, and obviously the leader has just not handled the conditions at all because it gets beaten out of sight. But
it was slow to recover, and they said that it blundered in going. So Trendy Lasses going for a spell. It had a bit of specking.
Got smashed out of the gates. I saw it, but again, whatever. Worry about it next prep. Second horse went well. Just got held up there just before the turn, which probably cost it its best chance to win the race. But the winner's come from behind it, so it's hard to say too much. He just gets stuck behind the wrong horse, has to go wide. The winner cuts up inside, and I think the winner's still probably the better run. But it's a good effort to win first up off a break. It's just so hard to line up.
Yes.
The quality of the race.
Well, the last horse was beaten like 38 lengths or something, and it pulled up lame, and She's Extreme, you mentioned it received a bit of specking, and Lady Laguna, one of the solid favourites there, failed to do much.
Just a weird race. I think, like working out these two races very carefully wherever they go, and worrying that if they line up in the next 14 days, what this took out of them as well. Even though Fireburn was quite impressive there to the eye, it was off a 56-day grey card trial, but what does that take out of it if it lines up in a better quality race in the next fortnight?
Yeah, fair call. Okay, we'll move on to the Skyline, the other 2-year-old race. They've gone out 1.3 above to the 800, minus 0.6 to the 600. So above average tempo early and average by the time they got to the 600. Look, the winner here was well spec from very long odds to start around 14 to 1. And it was having its second start, 900 up to 1200.
Incredible effort, that.
Good friend of mine managed to back this and get a good result. Good on him. It was, I suppose, a video watcher's horse. It did really put him away late there at Newcastle and sort of set off the speed, and on a day that seemed to advantage, I thought, the on paces there.
On paces, but it did look like they sort of down the middle might have been a bit of an advantage. It was hard to line it up as well. Like, obviously a very good win, but the 9 to 12 was the thing that really made it difficult to line him up. But again, like, this is a horrible. The last section's horrendous, and that's where he kind of puts the gap in them. But it's hard to line this horse up. Geez, it looks a nice horse to the eye.
Yeah, it does. It was a good effort. And once again, though, the last section here was minus 13.7 from the 800 home and minus 11.8 from the 600. So really affected by
and
the
definitely had
conditions.
every chance. This horse had the cover behind him. Definitely, like, if there was a better part of the track, he's got to it. You definitely can't say it was a disadvantage to come down that lane. He's come, but he's the only one in the race that did anything, isn't he? Like, whether at times or not, he's the only one that put a gap in any sort of horses, and these are all forming a clump behind. Poor little Rise of the Masses just tries his heart out, but just can't find the line.
Yeah, well, I was on it in Gemelli, as I mentioned in the preview show, and didn't get the chocolates there, but El Padrino got a bit out of it, so that lessened the damage, but well done to those that backed the winner.
I don't know. Like, same as his first start, I don't know what to do with him. I would never have found him, to be fair, the way I kind of try and do form 9 to 1200 metres without some sort of superstar performance. And he did go well that first start, but he bucks the trend for mine to be able to win 9 to 12, especially on a bottomless surface. And I don't know really what to do with him yet.
I mean, a couple of horses pulled up slow to recover there. Gemeldi, Sandpaper, Man in the Mirror. And
it was a good effort, I thought, back towards the inside, Man in the Mirror, especially if it's pulled up.
Yeah, pulled up slow to recover.
Tough, those races, I think tough trying to work them out.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about those 2-year-olds. As you say, once they get back onto some firmer ground, if they do, next time out, we'll get more of a guide. Okay, so Ellsberg decided to stay towards the inside and bolted in there fresh.
Where have I got? I've got the other one. Where is it? No, here. Steward's footage. Hello.
Yeah, as I said, it was a tissue. Yeah, well.
Hello, a tissue.
Done your money cold there, unfortunately, and it was solidly back to tissue, 3 to 1 and 11 to 4. Look, the winner 5 to 4 out the 13 to 8 stayed towards the inside, as I said, the top of the straight, and then sort of was about 2 off for the main part of the straight, and then drifted out late under pressure. But it really sort of put them to the sword, didn't it? They've gone out 0.2 above to the 800 average tempo here. Look, you really can't make an excuse. I suppose it's a slight drag, the fact that the tissue didn't participate, and it was the only really solid runner in the betting. So who knows it.
And like you said, got full control, then got that rest from the 8 to the 6, and then just better than him really. Even if his fitness wasn't at the high level, it just was a horrible looking race. Like, I don't think. I think Brutality was out for a look. He's run second. I think Poetic Charm is certainly not up to this sort of grade usually, and the rest are not going that well. So he's basically won a one-horse race.
Yeah, well, they'd taken the blinkers off Brutality there first up, so you figured that pretty easily that it wasn't hard to work out that wasn't going to be the target.
No.
So what else do we say in the race? Order of Command look, it had some wet form and didn't sort of do any good. It was slow to recover. And what else can I say about the race? I think Atishu Lloyd's got a trial, Atishu, so we'll see it back for the trials.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
I'd just be treating that as a really good barrier trial for Ellsberg, wherever it went. And he's one that it doesn't look like that run would have taken too much out of him. Gerald's too smart to probably back him up too quickly. So I'd say he'll be okay wherever he goes. You know, as long as it's 2 to 3 weeks between now and his next start, he'll run true to form.
Well, he's sort of did that. He's followed that sort of 2 weeks second up and then 3 weeks third up, hasn't he, for the last couple of preparations?
Yeah.
So,
just didn't have a taxing run, no horse around him, no pressure. He just glides through it, so he'll be all right.
Okay, so we'll move on to a race 6 where Forbidden Love put in a new personal best on my figures. To the 800, they went 7.2 above. To the 600, 6.6 above. So a very solid tempo here. Vangelic, one of the horses I mentioned there, who was towards the inside, probably used a bit too much doing what it did. Forbidden Love sort of just popped off the fence there and
look
put
at them all kicking up inside here. It's quite amazing.
Yeah, well, they saw what Tim did the previous race. Ice Bath started a solid favourite there, about 10 to 9 after being 5 to 4 and even slightly better, I think, maybe early. Bit disappointing. I thought it came in the best part of the track the previous start, but it was a little bit disappointing. Kiku was sort of solid. There was money for it, and it sort of didn't get the job done. Promised Success ran on and ran the best last 200 of the race, but it ranked 33 on the day, so nothing special about it. Look, Forbidden Love seems to be able to do this, you know, in a preparation. It pulls out a run or so and sort of, you know, does very well. And
well, he had a really nice run first up to run really well second up, as in sort of was in this spot but never really got exposed, got out late, dashed up for 100 metres, didn't do a lot, but a lovely run to sort of bring them onto their peak. Had trial, did it? I think it trialled after that too. Yeah, trialled a little quiet, little clean out trial. So it was really set up nicely to do its best, I thought. Probably the jump to 1400, slight query, but I couldn't understand. Like, I think I marked them pretty similar, 13 to 4, take your pick, this horse and Ice Bath, and I couldn't believe I was sort of had a few things on Saturday, so I was up in Brisbane. But by the time, for this horse to SP even money, I couldn't understand. And I think that this horse got out to $8.50 or something crazy late.
It got out late, and unfortunately I backed it because it's just by virtue of the
silly price.
Race. Yeah, it got out to a silly price. And I backed Kiku as well. But anyway, we'll move on to race 7.
I think this horse can win a nice race. It's just lovely, got that lovely pattern turn of foot. So it's obviously in a good rein of form. Like you say, can go off a little bit as it goes into its preparations, but the way it's racing at the moment, I'd be backing Forbidden Love to beat Ice Bath in most races they went around in. So anyway, next.
So move on to the feature. Chipping Norton. They've gone out minus 2.9 to the 800, minus 4.6 to the 600. So below average tempo. Very Elegant did the job. Heavily backed 6 to 4 favourite. She's Ideal put in a really good run. It ran the 4th best last 400 rating on the day and the 3rd best last 200 rating. I thought Douay, who ran the best last 200 of the meeting, was a little unlucky actually, not to trouble the winner. It went enormous and will improve. She's Ideal's obviously on track. Angel of Truth stuck towards the inside there and boxed on pretty well. And Think It Over, who I thought might be a little bit easier in the betting because I was worried about its heavy track capabilities. It did a good job getting beaten about 1.5. So
I thought it was the worst ride of the day.
I
thought he had every opportunity to sort of punch forward and lead or control the tempo here, and all he's doing wanting to sit and look across and absolutely destroyed his chances, I think, by making it a sit and sprint when he could have easily bowled. Like last start, faster on race, he had the sit behind him and used his. I don't think he's a dynamic turn of foot horse. Think It Over, and this he turns it into a sit sprint, which just absolutely plays it out of his hand and into the hand of the horses, like Very Elegant. And it's just a weird race again to work out. Like as you said, obviously the slow tempos helped Angel of Truth to hold on for placing a couple of unlucky runners, but for horses like She's Ideal, She's Ideal and Due to probably be the two best runs in the race outside of the, really like 11-time Group 1 winner that you expect to run well. It's a really just a horrible cloud over weight for age racing for mine, and I think Due was like a certainty beat.
Yeah,
what does that say?
It'll be well found next time. I mean, very elegant.
But that scares you, doesn't it? Like Due being found in weight for age races. Like, okay, it's got a horse. It's a nice mare with upside, but she's not a weight for age horse. Like, anyway. She is now. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I'm scared about weight for age racing because Due and She's Ideal are weight for age horses now.
Well, it's always had a bit of talent, I think. So.
Oh yeah, I get that, but you know what I'm going at. Like she's no saint, she's no bloody rubber stamp weight for age horse. And look at this margins over a weight for age race. I know it was a horribly slowly run race, but you've got probably a 2-miler that's coming from the back in a slow run weight for age race, getting beat ahead. This, whatever this line is, and Due, who, jumped clean, ends up 3 back the fence, has to be dragged back around him off a slow run race and then ripping home like that. Jeez, it's a horrible race.
It was a top run, but anyway,
great run. I just made it a horrible race on paper. Like ugly race. It's just because it's so slow run, zip home. All credit to the winner second and Due for sure in the race.
Plenty of layers and backers around for the winner, and obviously the winners prevail with the support. Top ranked ran well. It was lame 3 out of 5 though on pulling
3 out of 5 lame, seriously lame.
It is seriously lame, and it was a good run. It got held up. Colette was a little easy in the market, 9 to 4 out to 11 to 4. It sustained a laceration to the off hind coronet, whatever you want to make of that. But probably it was, I suppose it had to ease because it was very well supported early.
Yeah, 9 to 4 or whatever it was. Early was short, like in the morning. But I've got huge worries over this race. And even Stockman, it's not far away in a weight for age race.
Very Elegant's rating is obviously well down on what it can do, and
I think it didn't win dead, but I think it won. I don't think it was a race they were interested in, and everything just planned out for it.
Yeah, but that's often what she does too. Is that she doesn't.
Oh, that's it. That's all she is. She's no superstar. Yeah. She is a superstar. She won 11 races, but 11 Group 1 races. But she's no Winks. She's just tough and does the same thing all the time.
Okay, let's move on to the surround, where they've gone out 1.2 quicker to the 800, 0.4 to the 600, so average tempo here. The unfancied, or third string of Waller here, won the race. It was well back though. It was sort of like, let me have a look at my notes. I did put something down here. The winner, 14 to 1 into 9 to 1. Star Tontes ran some pretty slick closing sections from the 8, 6, and 4.
Slick enough.
Best on the meeting, and 4th best last 200. So didn't quite get the job done. I ended up backing Espiano, which sort of laid in and continued to lay in sort of the whole straight there. And look, it was a good run again, but
I bet up on Star Tontes and Heresy. I thought they were going to run 1-2 at 1 second there. Jesus Christ. It's like another, right? What do you make of this? As in, is there not much between these fillies? Is like going forward, have they caught up to those horses as they get out in distance? There's a horse in this race called Hope in Your Heart, which scares me about all the form. Is it just one that's sort of snuck in under the radar and going really well? Because it has run well, but all its runs is prep and trial. What do you do with these fillies? Is there just not much between them all?
Maybe not that much. Also, the conditions on the day, testing
That's
conditions.
It. I think you'll get your price Espiona next time.
You'll definitely get the best price. And look, you can't write it off yet, but maybe it's not as good as we thought. Bang Girl sort of ran, the second best of the meeting, 8, 6, and 4, and the 7th best last 2 rating. It's gone okay. 4 moves ahead, wanted to over race badly, so it's a bit of a nutcase. Jamia, they said, excuse the track conditions. So
It's got to go to 1,200 metres. The
Never
Zuccarello had a barrier
never,
trial here. Like instead of last start up outside him, was dragged right out of the race and sort of let run home. It's an interesting race. These fillies are probably the most exciting thing for me in the carnival, trying to all work them out because there's so many that have got pretty solid ability. Like they're all chasing the line. These things, they're all attacking the line pretty much.
I wouldn't write off.
It's going to be a great race.
Wouldn't write off Never Been Kissed. It did. It was slow.
Ran really well.
So, yeah, so not too bad yet. Move on to race 9, the 2,000 metre benchmark 88. They've gone out 12.8 fast to the 800, 12 fast to the 600. Solid tempo here. Once again, the less fancy Waller runner got the job done out here, out wide. What else can we say in this race, John? LeBeau.
This is the worst race in the history of racing.
Worst race in the history of racing?
As in, it's just that going into it, I gave it a nice confidence. I've never given a race a less confidence level. We had Waller with runners that were first up for a year and 254 days, the winner first up for 2 quiet trials. Like, how could you find it? You knew it could. You knew they could run well, but you know what I mean. Like there was just so many queries over this race.
It was spec'd in the betting, the winner. So
yeah, no doubt. Like, how could you find it? You know what I mean? With any confidence, first up, 254 days, 2 quiet trials on a heavy track, first up, and the race has gone huge, and it's a crazy performance on paper. Really, it was one of these races where you just didn't. There was too many queries. It blew my head off.
LeBeau, Outlandos, and Galaxy Bell all held up there.
All unlucky.
Yeah, to a degree, for sure. So what do you say? Canasta probably may have gone a little bit too quick. Who knows? But
that's just it. That's the horse, and it's run well again in that state hard fence. It's these horses drive you mad.
They can have that effect. They can have that effect, John.
Well, yeah, and like if you're on Galaxy Bell, you're dead set. You're ready to jump off the gap. Sort of gets checked all the way from here, all the way. You're held up, bang, bang, bang. What was the other one? LeBeau. Same thing.
Yeah.
And then how do you take anything away from the winner, who's first up for 254 days on this track, and it's even here. It's niggled and going backwards, and then gets to the outside and lets rip. So, these horses are hard to line up, and I don't know what the hell you do with them coming out of this race. I think, what do you say? Yeah, he's going for a spell. That's probably the most I pulled out of the race is he's going for a spell.
It was slow to recover, and the money again for it, 5 to 1 and 4 to 1. It's soft for a spell, as you say. So, yeah, I think we just move on to the last, the 1,200 metre 88. They've gone out 1.8 above. 1.6 above to the 600, so above average tempo early and average by the time they got to the 600. Gravina, well backed, returned as a gelding and has returned well. And the Bopper, who didn't handle the conditions, stopped pretty quickly. Sort of dipped in the going near to 600, Bowman said. So take from it what you will. Turnstile was lame, 2 out of 5. So. And
this is a weird race. To me, looked like a one-horse race. If you knew it was race fit, it scared me that they scratched it last Saturday. I don't know what the reason was there. It looked really probably better placed last Saturday than here, like resuming on a heavy track, and looked like Nash was just told to keep it out of trouble. It would just be winning, and that was how he rode it. Like he's ridden it pretty arrogantly, 4 wide out there, no cover, just stayed out of trouble, and it's picked him up and raced away. Pretty good horse with pretty good upside, I think, now that it's been gelded. Looks like it's certainly improved Gravina. I think it's probably one of the horses to follow out of the meeting.
I agree. And in terms of horses to follow, I have Ellsberg and Douay, which is a bit obvious.
It's scary, Douay, because she was too good to be true to a certain point. As in, like, the market will just be all over her. Like, run sections, unlucky, held up, lost momentum. Group 1, wait for age, blah, blah, blah. Everyone will be all over it. But I do agree it was a good run. Devil's Triangle can run well in another highway, and so can Prince of Coney, a bit more Devil's Triangle. It's a more genuine horse for mine. Mayro's scary because she'll be well found. Nothing out of the 2-year-olds because it's too scary. Ellsberg definitely in for a good prep. Forbidden Love, I just think all merit was with her, and you can't drop offer off that. They may still want to back Ice Bath again next time they go around. Chip away. The fillies it's just going to be a great race. Yeah, I don't know. Nothing. There's about 7 you could follow out of it. Yuck. And I think Ravina's the horse to follow out of the whole meeting for me.
On to the questions. Okay. On to the questions. Brought to you by Topsport, of course. If you don't have an account with Topsport, you should. They will give you a fair bet, and they will bet Topsport odds, and they will bet decent minimums from the time they go up too. So if you haven't got something organised there, make sure you speak to Tristan and get yourself set up. Okay, so first question this week, John, is from me. Whoever me is.
I thought it was from you. I was going to say, wow.
When would you recommend you do the form? Question. From acceptances or weights or wait until the final fills and barriers.
Yeah, that's interesting.
How imperative is the early price compared to betting 2 minutes out? So for me, I wait until barriers because maps are an important component of my final price. So that's my answer. Some people can do it earlier. By all means, you can. In terms of betting early or waiting 2 minutes out, look, I bet late most of the time. And when I say late, 2 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds, even right up to the jump. So, look, some people do very well betting early. I've got a friend of mine who's a good punter, and he, I suppose, makes his cream betting early, and he's very good at doing that. I suppose you need to be able to get on, and you need to be structured with your work flow so that you can actually achieve that. That's what I think. John, what do you say about all that?
I think it's pretty much a case of, so like betting pre-acceptances, you want to know a lot. You want to be really confident the horse handles, all conditions, pretty much a horse that's, no matter what, as you say, the draw or anything, it's not going to affect it, like a horse that goes forward or something like that. And as it gets closer to race time, you've got more information at hand and you can probably make a more educated decision. So for me, you want more value the further out that you're betting, and you want to be more confident about the horse that you're backing and where it's going to be and the conditions of the day, and that it's going to handle all that and still demand a price that you're happy with. Whereas 2 minutes out, you know how the track's racing, most likely, the conditions, everything. So like you say, barriers, everything's exposed late, so you don't have to demand as big a premium in price.
And that's where the majority of the liquidity is anyway. Most of the pros bet very late. So
yep.
I think we can move on. Les has sent through a question. Why do punters automatically blame the track when things don't go according to market expectation? It's a factor, no doubt, but one of many. I don't know, John, what do you say?
I very rarely blame the track. And if I blame the track, I'll be blaming myself if it's just the track, because I've probably misread it or made a bad decision or something like that. I don't know about blaming the track. That's not really an excuse that I use very often. Mate, like if you're betting a long way out and all of a sudden you bet pre-post 2 months out and there's a 1-lane highway and you back-to-back marker or something, you could be disgruntled, but day to day, certainly not something I tend to do.
You're taking matters into your own hands when you do that anyway. I mean,
exactly.
That's why you supposedly get a premium, or why the attraction is that you might get a premium on the price. So.
And it could fall in your favour. It's one of those ones, isn't it? It goes around, it comes around.
Yeah, I think Les is a reasonable question. I mean, maybe some of the sort of hobby punters do that sort of thing. They look for something to blame, whether it's the jockey or the track or something else, but. Not something that we would do.
Yeah, not that one. That one's the one that I don't tend to. I've got all the excuses in my playbook, but that one I might have to add.
There you go. JR has sent a question through. What do you do when you find what appears to be the right horse with the right setup with the wrong jockey? When a jockey is completely cast, do their mounts even have a price, or is it just steer clear until the tide turns? I think that a horse with the perfect setup also involves the rider. And for me, that's an important part of it. Every horse has a price. I mean, there's no such thing as they don't.
Can't
You can't just pen horses. I would dare to suggest that if it's a good trainer, that when the horse has the right setup, you'll generally find that they have one of the better riders on the horse. So I would think the jockey is a fairly imperative piece of that puzzle. What do you say?
I think you're right, and if it's not the case, if it's the final piece of the puzzle that doesn't fit, as in the jockey's the only part that is not ideal, and you just don't want that horse to be finding a tricky position that requires extra effort from the rider. Anything that's going to be maps poorly, going to get back in a slow race, going to be on the inside, going to do anything like that. So you want the horse to map naturally in a really good position to overcome it. I think I know that there wasn't added who the rider is in this case, which I have omitted, but I think that's the key. So if say it's a soft lead or something like that, it's much more difficult to mess that up, even if you're out of form, than if it's a horse that's going to map a bit scary. So I'd be paying more attention to where you think the horse is going to be naturally in the run, without factoring in who the jockey is, and if it needs a bit of help and manoeuvring from wherever you think it's going to be, probably give it a miss.
Fair enough. Lucas has a question. With the wet weather around, do you feel you have a better edge in the wet with more hands-on approach, or does it decrease confidence for either of you? In general terms, what factors in form are you looking for to promote on wetter tracks, or is it all subjective? Look, it's a fact that punters bet less on wet tracks, generally, as a general rule. I bet less on wet tracks than what I would otherwise. I don't really look for particular factors when I think the track's going to be wet, so I don't go looking for wet track horses. I don't sort of promote horses' current form cycle when I'm assessing them just because they might have a couple of good wet track runs in their history. So I tend to do the form for a dry track, I suppose, even if it's going to be wet. If that makes sense, I'm looking for horses that have got the genuine credentials to be there, and then I might make some slight adjustments in terms of my map penalties or bonuses on a wet track, and in terms of the severity of them, or if a horse is going to particularly map poorly because of the conditions, aka what we had at Rose Hill a week or two ago. But that's my way. I'd probably bet less. I don't sort of go, well, it's a wet track, I have to do this.
I think there's a huge difference between a wet track and a rain during the program wet track. And a wet track I like say Saturday had been a heavy track coming in there and no rain forecast during that program, I would have set up there pretty confidently. And I'm not big on saying things handle the wet, they don't either. But I do sort of put a premium on horses with a good fitness base and setup heading into those meetings more than I would on a good track. And I do promote horses that are going to be up on speed, especially if they've got that good setup, because I think it's much more difficult to sustain long runs and make ground from back in the field on a wet track as opposed to a dry surface. So there are things that I do to promote certain horses, and I'm pretty harsh on horses with poor setups from a fitness perspective heading into a wet track. And it's funny, when they've got a poor setup but a poor fitness setup, then I will go looking at their wet track credentials, because sometimes there are horses that can sort of get through it early in their preparations more than others. I don't know why. Light horses, what it is, I'm not sure. So that's sort of a bit of a backup thing. But wet during the program, I hate with a passion, because to me, it introduces things like lanes and changing biases and changing conditions. It's just an absolute nightmare for me. Rain during the program, hate it with a passion.
Okay, Matt's got a question. Your thoughts on Colette and Ice Bath? That's for both of us. Pre-race, they were both very solid in the market and both considered to be amongst the best wet trackers in the country. Both can probably be considered disappointing. Do we put that down to being second up, one very testing ground, or forgive them both? And should we be worried about them going forward into their preparations? Colette probably had slight excuse because it sustained a minor
Slight
injury.
excuse, and it was an ugly race. Yeah,
it was an ugly race. I didn't think it had as good a chance as early markets had it.
I agree with you. We like factoring everything in, including the bit of interference and laceration. It probably ran to its form.
It'll be interesting to see. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what it comes out. And Ice Bath, I think, was a bit disappointing, and I think the connections are sort of suggesting that as well. Their view is that it should be forgiven because of its first up run was in a strong tempo race, and going into this race, that perhaps maybe it was a bit, I don't know. I can't. I don't think that's right. I think it was suited by the conditions first up, and hence had that flashing light run. But often those flashing light horses go around under the odds, and it wasn't the better ground. So, look.
I think it had more in its favour first up than it did on Saturday, and it ran to its form pretty close. I don't think it did. I don't think it ran horrendously poorly either. I'd be very scared to forgive it completely.
Yes, I would be too, but Colette, not sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question here from Jack is, looking at Caulfield, it was easy to identify a massive bias being on the fence and leading. When a bias isn't clear to the eye, how do you go about identifying them as the meeting progresses, and how much do you adjust accordingly? Look, I'm not 100% sold on the fact that there was a really strong bias at Caulfield. I mean, yes, you could say, the first four were leaders, I think. There was a couple of races there where they were, the best horses in the race, favourites, flying mascot odds on. Castlereagh Kid was...
It looked like no tries in that race.
Second
and the tempos were diabolically slow, weren't they?
Yeah, tempo related. Sierra Sue did race on the fence. I think the inside was probably an advantage in terms of lane. I don't think necessarily it was a dynamite leaders track. The winner in the Blue Diamond and the second horse came off them.
When there was tempo in the race, you could get into the race. Yeah,
you could get into the race. So I'll get the lanes data and I'll have a better idea then. But look, on face value, I can understand why the first four leaders, I think it was, wins, and you go, oh, it's the leaders track. But you do need to take pace into consideration. So when you talk about in your question, as the meeting progresses, how do we adjust? Well, I'm looking at that. So I plug the times into a tool in our database. It tells us whether or not it's as a result of pace or whether there is a genuine bias there. And I can tell you, looking
You're basically doing lane data on the fly, right? That's exactly what your computer tells you after you've got full times and everything in automatically. You're trying to do on the day, whether it's using your own SP or the market SP, trying to work out what horses have done what in certain areas and if there's an advantage on what you expected before the race, quickly after the race. It's the only way you can do it, right?
And what the shape of the race is and whether or not it is just tempo related. So I took the view that, yes, it seemed like an advantage being on the inside, but the leaders winning were tempo related and not necessarily due to bias. So that was the way I handled it.
There was no disadvantage on the fence like there was previously. That's kind of the best way to explain it. You would say there's definitely no disadvantage to be hard rail, but there was a strong case that the only reason they were dominating was due to the tempos early in the program.
Got a question here for you, John. From
mate, this is the pineapple of the week.
T. Clark.
Hang on, I'm giving you. This is him. My pineapple of the week. I'll go into depth for this. You can read the question.
Okay. Seeing it's this is a question for Walt. Seeing it's Randwick Guineas Day this Saturday, does John have a favourite Randwick Guineas 2014? Maybe also, if I win, can I have my $100 go to Harvey's college funds? What was the story around the 2014 Guineas? It was dissidents from El Rocker or something?
So I'd run into a bit of money. I think it must have been I backed a few winners prior to this, and I was in love with this horse, El Rocker. Tim was aware of it at the time. So was Hugh Bowman, who rode the horse. And we had this incredible friend with an incredible Bet365 account. And for whatever reason, I'm working off memory here, it was $5 everywhere. Bet365 kept going $5.50. and I just kept having 5,000 on it every time it went 550. And then they'd bring it into 5 for about 10 minutes and then put it to 550. So it became a personal psychotic game, which is not normal for a punter who, this is why I'm not one to ask about staking. And it became a personal thing. All of a sudden, I've got 140,000 on El Roca at whatever price it is, 550.
It must have been an appalling punter's account.
Yeah, it was insane, and this was in the glory days when they used to bet USP and everything. And I do have the replay here, and I have spoken to Hugh Bowman about it before. And what he said is that he's never in his life, before or after, been more confident in the run in a big race than he was on El Roca here, where it's just getting this perfect run behind the 2 leaders. And you can imagine I'm pretty happy here at this stage, pretty happy, pulls around him. The call is Mark Sheen's there, and he's dominated these horses all through the prep too, just quietly. And he said when he went to let down, he just didn't let down. He never changed leg, never let down. And P. Moody's polish kicks in late. They bump. And I went fully clothed straight into the pool. And it took me about 3 months mentally to recover. But that was the El Roca story that Tim will never, ever let me forget. And he did pull up with knee chips taken out of his knees after that race just to add salt into the wound. And now he goes around as a stallion to remind me of it for the next 10 years of my life. But thanks, Tim. Great bloke. $100 to Harvey. He wouldn't. There's no, and he'd retract that too. If he got the 100, he'd be ringing up asking for it. Don't worry about that.
Well done.
Okay.
Second question from Les this week. Serious question. Is there a factual measurement to track bias, or is it optics and opinion? Look, I'm going to speak just purely from a data angle. For me, it's all about data and it is all about measurement. And there is no longer an opinion that I even have on the subject. So I completely hand over to the computer and let it score the horses, each horse in the race. I used to do what most people do, and that is try to identify it and try to sort of have a view on what it is and spend maybe half an hour or 40 minutes after a meeting reviewing the races and sort of trying to lock the bias down, because it is such an important part of the process. Generally speaking, that you're wanting to give horses who are in the worst section and bonus horses are in the best. In terms of position bias, obviously, if it's a leaders track, you may or may not want to downgrade the leaders, but you certainly want to excuse the horses racing back in the field if they haven't got the conditions to suit with tempo and so forth. So I think it's a mathematical measurement, but most people would probably try to make some sort of decision on what the bias is based on anecdotal evidence and what they see with their eye.
And what I like is sort of going off what you're saying. So I used to do it all by eye pretty much. I would use whatever data I had to try and work out why a race was run the way it was, it was, what was true, what was not. But then, like you're saying, and this is something that you've introduced into your software, which I obviously use. And without going into too much detail, that this is what sort of identifies, the best places to be in certain, positions in the run during the race. That's where they during the race and what lanes during the race. So instead of having to go through all that now, I can reference your software, and then if something doesn't make sense, I'll obviously always interrogate it a little bit more. But this is certainly shortcutted the way I identify biases as well, because this is purely like data driven, as you're saying, and no opinion goes into it, and then I can overlay my opinion a little bit, but it certainly saves me the time of having to go back and try and work it all out manually without, off the top of my head, which is sort of far more. It's much easier to do it if you've got a factual basis to work off, and then add in a little bit of opinion rather than colour up the whole box in yourself.
Yeah, and I suppose I'm not looking at that data really. Then getting the computer to interpret it. So it says, this is what the scores should be for each section that I think is important. But anyway, it is a mathematical measurement for me. Next question from McCreek. What steps would you take when you encounter a sustained losing run? For a bit of context, over the last 8.5 years, have taken my cash back punting bank from a couple of hundred into 5 figures, plus taken much more out in profits. Had runs of outs before, but nothing like the shocking run of outs I've had since October. That is a long run since October. Look, losing periods are inevitable. If you're punting, it doesn't matter how good you are. It doesn't matter what your strike rate is. Even if you're backing even money favourites and your strike rate's roughly 1 in 2, you're still going to get drawdown and you're still going to get runs of outs. And that's what it is. The drawdown is what kills you in terms of the time, or what can mentally kill you, and what causes most punters to switch stride and do something different. And if you've got a proven method, you've been going this long and you haven't really done anything different too much, then I'd suggest you've got to stick it out. Look, by all means, you can cut back your stakes a little bit, if you think that you're starting to go bad, but that's purely just a mental comfort position. The problem
Which
with
is
doing
important,
that,
right? Which is as important as anything.
It's important.
I agree with that.
It's important, but the only problem I see in doing that is if you cut back too much, is when you do get onto a winning run again, you're not going to capitalise on it as much. So if you're staking correctly and you're not sort of over betting in terms of the horses and the prices you're taking, then your bank should be structured so that you can withstand a sizable downturn, at least 40-50% of your bank. But yeah, it's incredibly frustrating when it's happened, and it depends on how many bets you're having too. So if you're only having a small number of bets each week, then the period of drawdown could be significantly longer in terms of actual time.
But again, that shouldn't hurt your bank. It should be less effect on your bank, so less reason to worry, right?
Well, yeah, but mentally it's like, well, I haven't won since October. It's now March, so there's 6 months there. What the hell? What am I doing wrong? Maybe I need to change, and you start looking at potentially looking at things that are really anecdotal. Maybe consider how the horses are running. If they're running well and they're running close to the finish, and then maybe it's that you haven't got too much to worry about. But if they're all running very poorly, then you might need to go back and have a look at what you're doing. But if you're staking yourself right, don't get too strung out about it. Next one from Christopher. Just a quick question about track ratings for the show. I've heard some say it's rated off the worst part of the track, even if the rest of the track is mostly another rating. Is this true? How does it work? Look, I'm absolutely perplexed as to how the official readings are given these days. Generally speaking, we know it's no secret that track managers are directed to prepare tracks that have given it, i.e. dead. They use irrigation, they use verti draining, they use rail positions, and all those things have a significant effect on the bias. They will tell you, you ask this question to 6 different people, you'll get different answers. So I just rate it off the times. I don't have an opinion. It's simply a percentage difference between how fast or slow they're running to standards. Obviously, if there's rain during a meeting, you need to adjust or petition certain parts of the meeting. But look, how they come up with it, I just ignore it. I just use the data, use the bomb and the weather patterns and the information that you got at hand to try and work out what you think it's going to be. But invariably in Sydney, for example, you just add 2. So if they say 8 at 6, if they say 6, 4, 4, 2, etc.
Well, there was a meeting yesterday, for argument's sake, at Mudgee, which is a good example because they downgraded it on Saturday from a 4 to a 6 off 3 mils of rain in the past 7 days. Mudgee traditionally, for fences, if there's a bit of rain around, the fence can be very orderly in the straight. They can sort of get to the middle of the outside fence. And then this is off 3 mil.
Yeah.
Come up at 2.6, I see off their times. I know all the times aren't through yet. So,
well, they've upgraded the track after race 6, so tracks don't generally improve, right? They deteriorate.
Yeah.
So they don't get better as such, generally speaking. So yeah, it was a good track. It was 2.6,
but it was always a good track. It should never have been changed. Like, what the hell is the downgrade from a 4 to a 6? You're on, and as a punter, you look at the bomb and that, and you're thinking, well, hang on, have they left the sprinklers on and they're not disclosing it? It really annoys you that these things are an issue. But like you say, at the end of the day, you're best to probably, make your own opinion.
Form your own opinion based on historical data. I'd say that's the best way to do it. Seamus has sent through a question. I've developed a spreadsheet which blends two sets of prices I have bought and the live Betfair market. I know PD blends his price with the live Betfair market. I'll qualify that in a sec. But do you think blending two sets of prices may average out and eliminate any real edge that may have been in one set of prices alone? Well, I suppose it depends on whether the prices you're getting are a raw opinion or whether they're sort of blended to begin with. So I don't know the answer to that question. I do blend with the live Betfair market and the official betting market late, but that's for staking purposes only, not to change my price or my opinion. So if I mark the horse at evens and it's 5-2, obviously I'd be a fool to back it as an evens chance long term. The market's just not that wrong on a consistent basis. Maybe 5-2 is wrong, so the answer lies somewhere in between. But so for staking purposes, I'll blend it, and the process I go through to blend it in terms of the calculations, I'll sort of keep that to myself. But look, there's different ways to do it, and there's no absolute right way or wrong way. But for staking purposes, you should at least consider what the market's doing if you've marked a horse a lot shorter. But yeah, I don't change my price.
A lot of people do this. A lot of people buy, whether it's a Lamborn or myself, or there's a million people that provide sets of prices, and they'll go 30% Lamborn, 20% John, 50% Paul Daly. It's very weird, but
well, they won't get mine, so there'll be no percentage.
Yeah, well, you know what I mean. Like, there's a lot of people that do that, and like, how do you work out? Yeah. I guess they just keep tinkering with it until it works. But I'm pretty aggressive. Like, mine's definitely a punters market. I'm definitely not a bookmakers market. I think Mark Lamborn's very similar. He's very aggressive with a lot of his prices. So, it depends. There's
a great example was the Profiteer there a couple of weeks ago. I mean, I probably sounded silly saying it was a 500 to 1 chance, and it obviously ran better than a 500 to 1 chance. But it's an opinion thing. I use the figures to help me derive that opinion, and I try to take strong positions. But I would, if I was going to back a horse like that, I wouldn't go all the markets, 25 to 1 or whatever it was. But I got it 500s. Well, maybe I would in that situation. But if the market was $8 or $10 and it held its early price, I wouldn't be so pig-headed to go, well, no, it's a 500 to 1 chance.
Same with me, like with Ice Bath Saturday. That's right. Like, I've got it marked at 7-2 or something, and it's SP's evens. Obviously, the answer probably was somewhere in between. But in the long run, because otherwise you don't have to be wrong many times to go broke.
Okay, so question of the week, John. Lucky last.
Hang on, I've got to press the button.
From Bailey, is there ever a time where you won't bet or reduce your bet when you're marked a horse shorter than its market price? Example, unsure of track pattern early in the meeting. Look, I think it's a great question on so many levels because it's such an important concept to grasp. I'm always questioning my price as either market price. And whenever I come up with a price, I'm doing so based on a certain set of assumptions. And depending on the horse or the type of horse I'm talking about, I'll have different views. So, for example, a horse that's resuming from a spell, okay, I might have trials to go off, or I may not have trials to go off. I might use historical form that's fresh and try and put a number on the horse based on that. But if I've marked a horse 2 to 1 and it's 5-2 out to 9-2 and it's 13-2 on the fair and it's a minute to go and it's first up, I've got that horse wrong, no doubt, because the market's very good at depicting the chances of first up horses. So what I'll tend to do then in that situation, Bailey, is I'll put that horse to market, and that will obviously free up that percentage, allocate it back to the other runners, and maybe enable me to get on another horse. So that's one example. If I've marked a horse much shorter, we just talked about another example. For staking purposes, I don't stake it. So if I've marked it evens and it's 2s, I'm not going to say, well, that there's a 17% difference in this horse. In real probability, I'm right, the market's wrong. I'm going to say that I think I'm right. I think the market's partially right, somewhere in the middle's where it fits. So, I might back it as a 6-4 chance, for example. I'm still going to have a sizable win if the horse wins because it's greater than my price, and I've obviously had more on it as a result of that. So that's one example. Pattern and bias is a separate reason. So if I get through to a meeting, and there was a great example. It was I think it was Rosehill last week, wasn't it? The meetings run into quickly. Yeah, it was. So Queen of the Ball was a great example. I came out and tipped it on the Thursday preview show. I liked it. The market still liked it. What I worried about was the map position, where it was going to be based on the condition of the inside of the track. So I sort of sent out a tweet saying, you know, I'm going to pass on this horse. So that's an example where bias really changed the way I was going to play the race and the way I priced the race up. And as it turned out, the winner ended up well over the odds, I thought, even though it wasn't a horse I thought I was going to gravitate too early. So you've got to be nimble enough to make decisions to change, but you've got to know why you're changing, not just because of what the market does, but because of the elements and the things that are actually occurring during the course of the day. That's a long-winded answer.
No, I agree, and I think what you said is interesting because often, even when I'm pricing a meeting, I may factor in that a horse is first up. It may map messy. There could be, a bias against it. That you're all aware of all those things, and you've pushed it to its limit of, like I might have, something that you might have evens in your market 7 or 4 because of all these little queries that market against it, and then the market still could be above it, but you're not sure. You're aware that you've sort of already penalised it pre meeting setup, and then it gets to that race, and like that's when you say, like, you've got to make the decision on the fly whether the value overcomes the queries in the race. And I think that's the key to the whole thing. And exactly like your answer, I can't really improve upon, because you've got to know what's gone into the price pre-race, where you think every query in the race, and then whether the value is exceeding it, and whether or there is no answer to the race, which is often you've got to come. When you set up a meeting, you've got to come up with a set of answers, but know how many different possibilities there are in certain races that are out of your control, and sometimes. Quite often I get abused because you send out prices. You'll say, hang on, you've sent out this price, much better available. Why isn't it a bet? Because I send out suggested bets as well. And, it doesn't make sense to a lot of people when you say, but yeah, that's what I've priced it. But there's, a confidence level in the race of, a horrible 3 out of 10 or something. There's a lot of races you've got to let go through to the keeper. And even if the horse wins, you can't be disappointed.
Indeed. Okay, punters, thanks for that. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Topsport, for the $100.
Thank you, Topsport. Bailey will get the $100. I'll get in touch, Bailey, and you can give me the details. We'll get that into your account today. In terms of the preview show, we did very well this week just past with the winner of the Blue Diamond being down.
All 3 of us.
Yes, all did well. Very elegant, got the chocolates. And John, you also found something too. I'm just trying to remember.
No, I mean, all 3 of us settled on Dormier. There was. Remember I was saying that all 3 of us found Dormier as the horse that was the silly price in the race. It was quite strange that we all lined up. I think, as I said, that we all lined up on a $16 chance. So it was good. Indeed.
And of course, we've got the Australian Guineas Day in Melbourne this week, and in Sydney the Randwick Guineas. Is the Randwick Guineas? What do I want to call it? Yeah.
It must be. That's what Tim's abusing me about. Must be Randwick Guineas.
Of course, yes. Randwick Guineas, and of course it'll be the Challenge Stakes and Canterbury Stakes, and also the Riesling and Todman lead ups to the Slipper. So
I'm shaking already.
Interesting to see what happens there. Okay, guys, thanks. We'll catch you later in the week.
Stay safe if you're in a wet area, and have a good week.
See you guys.
Outro.